He's one of the greatest players of basketball history and is arguably the most dominant player to ever live. So making a video that asks the question, how good was Shaquille O'Neal really, may seem ridiculous when the answer seems so obvious. Really, really good. But as someone who followed the entirety of Shaq's career very closely, I can definitely say that there's some underappreciated aspects and some misconceptions about his game and legacy. Kinda like how there's misconceptions about how safe you are on the internet. Which is why today's video is about NordVPN. A VPN encrypts the connection between your computer and the internet, which protects your data from hackers and from governments who are seeking to take your private information. As someone who makes a living online, I understand the importance of keeping my information private, which is why I use NordVPN. Another benefit of a VPN is that it allows you to act as if you're in another country, which in some cases allows you to access certain kinds of content that wouldn't be available to you otherwise, like Netflix content specifically for the United States, or even basketball games that are blocked due to network and location restrictions. Thanks to this VPN, I can always show my support for my team. NordVPN isn't just affordable, but it's also incredibly fast, unlike many of its competitors, which allows your streams to sustain a high level of quality as you enjoy your content. Go to nordvpn.com/JohnnyArnett to get a 2-year plan with an exclusive deal plus 1 month free. It's risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Today, we're analyzing the career of Shaquille O'Neal as we attempt to gain a more thorough and educated perspective of his resume. It was no secret that Shaq was a highly coveted prospect heading into the NBA, as he was taken out of LSU with the first overall pick in the 1992 draft by the Orlando Magic. This was a very different version of the Diesel than the one that we would come to know in Los Angeles, as this younger version of Shaq was slimmer, quicker, more agile, and simply more athletic overall. In many ways, this version of Shaq strongly resembled a prime Giannis, as he had lean muscle and was capable of handling the ball and could even take it coast to coast if he wanted to. This wasn't incredibly common, as he was still a true center at his core, who relentlessly dominated the game in the paint. In his rookie season, he was 7 foot 1 inches tall and was hovering around 300 pounds and played in 81 of the 82 games, as he poured in averages of 23.4 points, 13.9 rebounds, and 3.5 blocks on 56.2% shooting. Due to his dominance, the Magic improved their record over the previous season by 20 wins, and he was immediately being recognized as one of the best centers in the entire league. Simply put, it was one of the all-time great debut seasons of NBA history, as the 20-year-old was one of the most NBA-ready rookies that the league has ever seen. The following season, they drafted the incredibly gifted and dynamic point guard Penny Hardaway, and this is when Shaq's Magic went from simply a young team with potential to a young contender in the Eastern Conference. At this point, Shaq was only 21 years old, as he led the Magic to a 50-32 record as a sophomore, as he put up 29.3 points, 13.2 rebounds, and 2.9 blocks on 59.9% shooting. He led the league in overall field goal percentage, he was second in scoring, second in rebounding, and fourth in blocks. Again, he achieved all of this in his second season, while going up against the strongest era of the big man that the league has ever seen. In total, Shaq spent 4 years in Orlando and was close to winning the championship on multiple occasions. The first instance was in the 1995 NBA Finals, where his Magic was famously swept by the more experienced Houston Rockets. But what many people don't realize is that despite being beat by Hakeem, Shaq had a dominant series and was certainly blameless in their defeat. The other instance was in 1996, where his 60-win Magic were eliminated in the Eastern Conference Finals by the 72-10 Chicago Bulls. Then in the summer of 1996, Shaq stunned the city of Orlando by leaving for Los Angeles, where the real meat of his legacy would begin. During this era is when Shaq started to reach his peak dominating form. He did put on a significant amount of weight, but in the early years with the Lakers, much of that was sheer muscle mass. Yes, this did decrease some of the speed and agility of the Diesel, but that doesn't mean that Shaq's only skill set in Los Angeles was simply overpowering people. That is a common narrative about his prime, that Shaq simply scored in bunches by bullying the opponent. And although he did certainly manhandle the opposition, it's not quite his entire skill set. One thing that's rarely mentioned is that Shaq had extremely underrated footwork. Sure, he wasn't Akeem Olajuwon or Kevin McHale, but Shaq often took advantage of every step and intelligently utilized his pivot foot to get himself into the best positions for scoring. He also had an extremely reliable jump hook shot for the instances where he wasn't close enough to simply dunk the basketball over the defender. Another specific quality that is rarely spoken of was Shaq's willingness to punish the opponent physically regardless of his God-given size. Kobe Bryant spoke about this rare mentality in an interview several years ago.
For sure. I mean, this guy was a force like I have never seen. I mean, it was crazy. You know, a guy at that size, generally guys at that size are a little timid and they don't want to be tall. They don't want to be big. Man, this dude he did not care. He was mean. He was nasty. He was competitive. He was vindictive.
For 3 straight years under Del Harris, Shaq and the Lakers looked like a promising team, ready to compete for the NBA championship. But it wasn't until his first year with Phil Jackson that he would finally break through and reach the mountaintop. It also happened to be the greatest season of Shaq's career on an individual level, as he won his lone MVP in the 1999-2000 season, with averages of 29.7 points, 13.6 rebounds, 3.8 assists, and 3 blocks on 57.4% shooting. That season, he was first in scoring, second in rebounds, first in assists among centers, third in blocks, and first in field goal percentage. One thing that people often overlook is the fact that Shaq finished second overall in the Defensive Player of the Year voting behind only Alonzo Mourning. With this effort, he led his Lakers to a dominant 67-15 record and was rewarded with the MVP as a result. But in my opinion, he should have been the first unanimous MVP of NBA history. But he only received 120 of the 121 total votes, as the CNN reporter Fred Hickman voted for Allen Iverson instead, who clearly had an inferior season. Shaq would not only go on to win his first championship and his first Finals MVP, but he had arguably the greatest Finals MVP stretch of NBA history, challenged only by Michael Jordan's run from 1991 to 1993. There's an ongoing debate about whether or not Shaq carried Kobe during their 3 championship runs, and I certainly think it's disrespectful to Kobe to imply that a star of his caliber was carried. But I will say this. During that run, Shaq was the clear focal point of the Lakers' offense. The game plan was always to go through him, while the opponent's game plan was always about containing him. In other words, Shaq was the Batman to Kobe's Robin, both in terms of statistics and impact. Yes, Batman needed Robin to succeed, but let's not get it twisted. We know who was where in terms of the Lakers' hierarchy. Of the 3 Finals MVPs, Shaq's most impressive was probably his second, as you consider how he did it against that season's Defensive Player of the Year, Dikembe Mutombo. If he, of all people, couldn't contain Shaq in the finals, then absolutely no one could have that season. After that final stretch, it was around the 2003 to 2004 season that Shaq's physical fitness began to decline as he put on a significant amount of weight, rumored to be around 350 pounds, which played a part in Kobe's frustration with Shaq that ultimately led to their split. At this point in his career, it was clear that Shaq was still the most dominant center in the league, but it was also apparent that his prime years were now behind him. After a disappointing finals exit in 2004, Lakers management decided that they were ready to build upon their younger star and traded Shaq to the Miami Heat. Although the Diesel had clearly lost a step, he still stood out enough to be a serious MVP candidate. Alongside of a rookie Dwayne Wade, Shaq and the Heat went on to win 59 games throughout the regular season, which was the best record in the Eastern Conference. Throughout the season, Shaq put up solid averages of 22.9 points, 10.4 rebounds, 2.7 assists, and 2.3 blocks on 60.1% shooting. He was so impactful that he barely placed second in the MVP race to Steve Nash, separated by only a total of 34 points. It's one of the more controversial MVPs of league history, seeing how Shaq bested Nash in nearly every major advanced stat, like win shares, player efficiency rating, value over replacement player, and blocks plus minus. They made it all the way to Game 7 of the East Finals before they were eliminated by the Detroit Pistons. The next year, the Heat would not only get their revenge on the Pistons, but on the league as a whole, as they defeated Detroit in the East Finals and eventually the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA Finals. It's no question that Wade was clearly the best player in those finals with his historic performance, but Shaq still efficiently chipped in as he earned his fourth and final ring. After this season specifically, Shaq's athleticism and production would begin to decline dramatically, as his career wrapped up as a journeyman, traveling from team to team seeking one last opportunity at another championship ring. Unfortunately, that additional opportunity in the finals would never come. Many have criticized Shaq for not having the greatest work ethic and have harped on the fact that Shaq didn't have the greatest longevity because he didn't always maintain his fitness. Famously, analysts like Shannon Sharpe and even teammates like Kobe Bryant have perpetuated this narrative by being very harsh on O'Neal. The thing is, although I do believe there's some truth to it, I also believe that it's grossly exaggerated. Shaq played a total of 19 seasons in the NBA, which is an extremely high amount for a center, especially one of his size. On top of that, he was arguably the best center in the entire NBA for 14 straight seasons, and he had MVP votes in 14 of those 19 seasons while earning 15 All-Star selections. So honestly, I feel like people are nitpicking one of the greatest players of all time when they're criticizing Shaq's perceived lack of longevity. With an elite work ethic, at most, I think he gets another year or two of elite production, but that's it. When we look at his resume as a whole, Shaq made 14 All-NBA teams, 3 All-Defense teams, and was a 4-time NBA champion, a 3-time Finals MVP, the 2000 League MVP, and was the 1993 Rookie of the Year. He also led the league in field goal percentage 10 times, which is the most in NBA history, ahead of Wilt Chamberlain, and is double the amount of third place, which is DeAndre Jordan. Shaq is also currently sitting in 8th place on the NBA's all-time scoring list. He wasn't without any weakness though, as the Diesel famously struggled from the free throw line, shooting a career percentage of 52.7%. Shaq has always claimed that he made his free throws when his team needed them the most. But after much research, the statistics basically indicate that he shot roughly the same percentage regardless of what part of the game he was in. Rick Barry is among the people who offered to aid Shaquille O'Neal with his free throws, which would have involved Shaq learning an underhanded form for his foul shooting. Shaq boldly declined this offer simply for the reason that it looked ridiculous. It's unfortunate that Shaq was so prideful in this area, because if Shaq had actually been a great free throw shooter, then he likely would have finished his career as the consensus greatest player of all time. Regardless, all in all, Shaq is one of the greatest players of all time, and along with Michael Jordan and Bill Russell, he's easily one of the greatest NBA Finals performers that the league has ever seen. So now it's your turn. How good was Shaquille O'Neal in your own words? Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.